Proof of the moon splitting in Islam? Today I shall explain why the splitting of the moon is real, and I shall also provide some real authentic evidence, inshallah. First of all, we all know that the splitting of the moon was a miracle performed by the Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, and done by the will of Allah. To understand this event, we first have to understand what a miracle really is. A miracle is an extraordinary event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws, and is therefore attributed to a divine agency. So us Muslims, we do not claim this event a natural event. And because this event is so remarkable and extraordinary, many non-Muslims expect extraordinary proof of this event. Okay, first of all, there are two types of historic sources: the primary sources and the secondary sources. A primary source is an original document or artifact that was created during the time period being studied. For example, eyewitnesses, books who lived during a particular time or artifacts from that time period. And a secondary source is a document or artifact that was created after the time period being studied. For example, reference books, scholarly articles and research papers that analyze and interpret primary sources from a particular time period, or commentaries and analyses of historical events and trends from a particular time period. There are a lot of historic events and traditions that we accept despite it not having any primary source, such as the origin of the moon, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Trojan War, the city of Troy, the city of Mohenjo-Daro, and many more. All these events and traditions are accepted by historians, archaeologists, and scientists, despite having no primary sources. But why? Because there are other forms of evidence that support the existence of those events or traditions. There are secondary sources. So why is it that all these events are accepted by historians despite having no primary source? But when it comes to the splitting of the moon, with so many primary sources, everyone rejects that. Example of a primary source during the splitting of the moon are the eyewitnesses, and during the event there were a lot of eyewitnesses. So here are some of the people who physically witnessed the splitting of the moon. And all these eyewitnesses who claim that the moon has been split aren't just some random people. We almost know everything about them, and you can go search it yourself. We know when they were born, when they died, how they died. We know their family tree, their education, their reputation, etc. So all these people and their history are well known, so there is no reason to think that they did not exist. The splitting of the moon is also recorded in the most authentic book in Islam after the Quran, Sahih al-Bukhari. In his books of chains of narrators, it is mentioned that the splitting of the moon was indeed real. So again, how do we know that the narrators are all authentic? Well, first of all, the Imam had a tough and strict criteria to let a hadith be recorded in his book. He made sure that the narrators had a connected chain of narrations, and the narrator had to be trustworthy and reliable. So not only do we know who the narrators were, but also how reliable they were in their memorization and how trustworthy they were. But these were all Muslims. What about non-Muslims? Did they also witness this event? Yes, here are some non-Muslims who witnessed this event. These are all the non-believers. They were the enemies of Islam, and they were the one who challenged the Prophet. They were also the ones who witnessed the splitting of the moon. So even as enemies, they said the moon did split. And all these people and their commentary were documented in one of the most popular history books in the Islamic world, Bidayah wa Nihaya, by Ibn Kathir. And in this book it also says that the caravan that were traveling outside of Mecca and Medina, they also saw the moon split. So this miracle wasn't only to be seen in Mecca and Medina, but also outside of these cities. You may wonder now, what about the people outside of Arabia? Have they seen the moon split? Because there are no documents that say that the moon split. First of all, the miracle of the moon took place at night. The custom of people at night is for quietness and tranquility, and to stay at home and lock their doors. People do not notice much happening in the sky at night. Although there are many eclipses of the moon throughout history, most people did not know about them until they were informed by others. There are many reliable reports of majestic stars and lights rising in the sky at night in the past. Yet most of us have never heard of these miraculous events by any written historic manufacture. Secondly, people around the world could not have seen it, as it would have been daytime, late night, or early morning in different parts of the world. During this event, it was in the continent North America daytime, It was around 2 p.m. in Washington, D.C. In South America, it was also daytime in Rio de Janeiro. It was 3 p.m. In Perth, Australia, it was around 2 a.m. In Europe, it was still daytime. And in the big cities in Asia, such as Tokyo and Beijing, it was around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. And again, almost no one would be awake at that time and looking up into the sky. However, in Arabia, the night was still young. It was around 9 p.m., but it is not likely that a large number of people in lands close by would be observing the moon at exact the same time. They had no reason to. Even if someone did, it does not necessarily mean people believed him and kept a written record of it, especially when many civilizations at that time did not preserve their own history in writing. And even during those hours, many people were in their home preparing to go to sleep. However, there is a report from India that someone actually witnessed the moon splitting. It was the king of Kerala in India named Cheraman Perumal Rama Varma Kulashekara. He saw the miracle while he was on the rooftop of his palace in Kodungalore in a moonlit night. The king had come to know about Islam through the Arab merchants and became more curious to know more about the Prophet and his religion after the moon-splitting incident. The king Cheraman then traveled all the way to Arabia to meet the Prophet Muhammad and declared his conversion to Islam in his presence and adopted a new name, Tajuddin. He later also performed Hajj. As per the wishes of the Prophet, a team of his companions led by Malik bin Dinar started their journey with Tajuddin to propagate Islam in Kerala. But along the way, the king fell sick. The king later died and got buried in Zafar, now Salalah, in Sultanate of Oman. The king also ordered before his death a mosque to be built in Kerala. This was the first ever mosque in India, and it was named Cheraman Juma Masjid. And the mosque is still standing till this day in India, which can also be used as a physical evidence that the moon really did split. This incident is well documented by Mr. Hamidullah in his book, Muhammad Rasulullah, William Logan in his book Malabar Manual, and Ahmed Zainuddin Makthum in his work, Thufathul Mujahideen, as well as in the interview with Raja Valiathampuran of Kodungalore. This event is well accepted as a historically proven record with oral and written traditions by the National Digital Library of India Project Central Library.